You know, I kind of love the idea of this channel being used as a way to cover all these different books out there in the world of comics. And honestly, when it comes to DC All In, I do see a few people talking about some of the books that DC is releasing. But I kind of feel like some books kind of fall through the cracks. And for me personally, this is one of those books. Here we go. The question: All Along the Watchtower. Now, we're only covering the first 3 issues of this series to kind of get an idea if you guys will like this, but also seeing like how this series does fit in perfectly with the rest of the books that DC is releasing at the moment. Now, if you're just wondering like, hey, who in the world is the question? Like, is it Vic Sage or possibly Renee Montoya? It is Renee Montoya once again. Now, she had been the question before, and I want to say it was all the way back in right after Final Crisis, because when it came to Vic, he had died. But before he had died, he had asked Renee to take up the mantle, which she did say yes. Now, thanks to the New 52 and DC Rebirth, there were some changes in her actual origin when it came to her becoming the question. But either way, it's her right now being able to fit right back in that role once again in the most perfect time. And the reason why I'm saying that because with the whole idea of DC All In, their main goal is to make sure that we finally get the Justice League that we have been wanting ever since the 2004 cartoon show series, Justice League Unlimited, where basically you have almost every hero on Earth being able to join the league. And so with the whole idea of the Watchtower now being home to almost every single hero across the world, that still kind of leaves some issues to happen inside the Watchtower. And that brings in the question, somebody to make sure nothing truly bad happens inside the Watchtower. Because when it comes to Renee Montoya, when she was recruited at first, it was Batman coming to her. Now, by this point in the timeline, Batman and her are not on the same page, but Batman knew that somebody would be able to get through to her, and that would be Superman. Now, for Superman, it's really more of him saying like, you are the right person because you ask the right questions. You know, we feel like there's somebody or something trying to get inside the system of the Watchtower and sooner or later try to use the Watchtower as a weapon. And so their main goal is to use her to figure out who could possibly be that person who could turn the Watchtower against our heroes. And that is why I say it fits in perfectly with everything else going on with all the other books in DC Comics. And really, as we go through our coverage of this series, we're going to see different moments that kind of lead into other things happening in the other books across DC Comics. Now, you do have Renee Montoya being confronted by Wonder Woman. And really with Diana, she kind of adds on to what Superman is saying. And what I mean by that is really more her saying like, this is now the home to hundreds, possibly thousands of different heroes across the earth, going out of their way to protect the earth. But the thing is, who watches over us? And so it's not her just wondering like, okay, who could be trying to turn the Watchtower against the heroes, but also who's watching over the heroes to make sure they don't cross that line. Now, when it comes to Diana, it's also her introducing the different people who will be helping out the question with all these different issues that's going to pop up left and right as we go through this series. So starting off with both of the Blue Beetles. Now for Ted Core, the first Blue Beetle, he'll be the one to kind of be the tech guru for Renee. So anytime she needs some kind of tech, she'll go to him. Next up will be Jaime Reyes, the second or really the third Blue Beetle. But either way, for Jaime, he's kind of like a deputy. He'll go out of his way to help out Renee to watch over the Watchtower completely. Now, we do learn here that apparently when it comes to the Watchtower system, there have been these glitches. And so just like that, we get our first clue. Somebody is trying their best to hack into the Watchtower system. And so for Hami and Ted, their main goal is to make sure if they can find any patterns in these glitches. Now, we also learned that for Renee, she has this weapon, this shotgun. Now, with this shotgun or a rifle, whatever, she has the ability to shoot someone into the Phantom Zone. So just like that, they go into a cell that's inside the Phantom Zone. Now, that'll be very important for a later chapter. But you do have Diana introduce two other people who could possibly help out Renee. The first one be Animal Man and also another character known as Ken Kawa. Now, Ken Kawa is part of the Challengers of the Unknown, but here's the thing, because you do have Diana walk Renee over to the menagerie. Now, the menagerie is going to be part museum, part science lab. It contains all these different animals or creatures from all across the universe. Now, that part right there again will also be very important, but for Diana, she really wants Renee to meet her field agent, and that would be, well, Batwoman. Now, for me, this is hilarious. And the reason why, because in the early 2000s, these two characters used to date one another. But of course, they are now officially broken up. But now it's kind of like being forced together to figure out what exactly is happening with the Watchtower. But now it's time for us to go ahead and get into the action of the book, because we now pick up with Jaime Reyes. Now, when we do, it's really more of Jaime kind of, trying to figure out the pattern in the glitches. But then out of nowhere, the alarms go off. And the reason why, because the place is being attacked by a character known as Conduit. Now, Conduit's been around for a very long time in DC Comics. And matter of fact, he is a Superman villain. Now, let me explain the actual origin of this character, okay? So when it comes to Conduit, he was born the same night Kal-El had arrived on Earth. Yes, you heard that right. So there was a young couple trying their best to get over to a hospital. The problem was that there was an accident. And so unfortunately, you had Conduit's father having no choice and go ahead and help give birth to his son, Conduit. But the problem was that Kal-El's rocket ship flew right over them. And so there was radiation coming from the kryptonite. And of course, it gave him powers at a very young age. Now, when it came to Kal-El and Conduit, they both went to the same high school. And matter of fact, over the years, they were kind of like rivals, but not really. You see, for Clark Kent, he had no idea that Conduit hated him back in high school. But the thing was, Clark was able to beat him in every single thing. That is the actual first part of the origin of Conduit. Now, there were a few other things that go with it, but either way, over time, he became a supervillain, a Superman. But the question is right now, why in the world is he attacking the Watchtower for? Now, you do have the question also some other heroes being able to help out when it comes to defeating the Conduit. But the problem is, though, the Conduit was never there. This was an android that was pretending to be that character. And now the question is, who in the world has sent this android here to the Watchtower for? Now, for Renee, she already knows, to be a distraction. But the question is right now, distract the heroes from what? And that is when we jump over to a different room where we pick up with what seems to be a dead body. And of course, it's Ken Kawa. Now, we met him earlier. He's one of the members of the Challengers of the Unknown. But it seems like right now, he was attacked and possibly killed in a different room. And the question is right now, by who? And so that kind of leads us over to, well, the second chapter. Now, as we get into the second chapter, we're really picking up with Animal Man. Now, you have Animal Man being told that one of the animals or creatures that he was supposed to be watching over had apparently escaped. Now, we do learn that apparently it was a very dangerous animal, but we're not really told in this section which one it was. But we are going to find out in the next section. So we jump over to, well, Renee. And we have Renee and also Blue Beetle currently inside her room. And the reason why, because when it came to Ken, he was killed off inside of her room. And so for her, she's kind of like, okay, how in the world Ken got in my room? And two, what in the world attacked him. Now, we kind of find out that Ted Kord has a video. And this is where things get a tad bit, well, mysterious. And the reason why, because you had Ted show her the video. In the video, we kind of find out that a Denegarian lion was the creature that broke out earlier, and that was the one who attacked Ken. But we kind of find out that Ken was kind of tricked into the room by Batwoman. And so now for, well, Renee, is her trying to figure out why in the world would Batwoman try to kill off Ken for? But for Renee, she knows that she just can't go out of her way and begin to question Batwoman on why in the world she attacked Ken for. But she does know that she needs to gather all the info she can to get a better idea of what's going on. And so she heads over to the bar. Now, when it comes to Renee, she is an alcoholic. She's trying her best to stay sober at the moment, but she now knows that no matter what, she has to go into this bar and talk to a character known as Nightshade. Now, Nightshade is one of the many characters in this book you might not know of, or you might, but Nightshade's an old DC character. Now, I'm not really going to sit down and try to explain her entire origin, but for Renee, she knows if she needs info, go over to Nightshade. Now we have to jump over to another character, and that would be the Bulleteer. Now, the Bulleteer is another character you may or may not know of, but for the Bulleteer, she is covered in some kind of special skin, but the head of her body is shaped like a bullet. It's really weird, but either way, when it came to DC, or really the Justice League, they kind of put her in charge of watching over all the different weapons that our hero's going to collect over time. Now, while she's out there doing her job, she's then confronted by the Eradicator. Now, the Eradicator is an old DC character. Matter of fact, the last time we had talked about him was back in the Reign of the Superman storyline. Now, in that storyline, we had learned that he was created a long time ago, centuries ago, as a way to protect the purity of the Kryptonian race. But right now, apparently, he's working for somebody else, and his goal is to steal a very special Green Lantern ring that belonged to a character known as Lord Malvolio. Now, for Lord Malvolio, he was a Green Lantern from 1612. Yes, you heard that right. You see, his father was an alien from a different sector who came to Earth. Now, we never learned why in the world he came to Earth, but when he did, of course, he fell in love and got someone pregnant, the mother to Lord Malvolio. Now, once she gave birth, she had died from childbirth. But after that, you didn't have Malvolio kill off his father and then being able to take his Green Lantern ring and head over to his father's homeworld. And when he did that, he became the actual ruler of that world for a good while until you had the Guardians finally handle him. It was a very interesting storyline, which I'm kind of down to cover soon on the channel. But either way, his ring was kept at the Watchtower to make sure it does not fall in the wrong hands. But now we have to jump over to, well, Batwoman. Now, when we do, it's really more of Batwoman going out of her way to check up on Ken. Now, for Batwoman, she's telling us that she just heard that something happened to him. But let's not forget that we saw a video where it did seem like she was trying to kill him off. But while she's in the room of Ken, you didn't have Renee walk into the room. Now, for Renee, she saw the video of Batwoman. She's kind of like, hey, I saw a video of you trying to attack Ken. And so you have Renee show her that video. But why you have the two ladies talking to one another, well, that is the moment they get attacked by the Eradicator. Now, before the Eradicator has showed up, you had Ken begin to freak out. And the reason why, because he says somebody is trying to come after him to get something out of him, something inside of him. And that was when you had the Eradicator show up. And apparently Eradicator's all like, hey, listen, Renee Montoya, the Question, and also Batwoman, you two are not my targets at all, but that man is right there. And so for the Eradicator, his main goal is to get Ken. Now, at the very last second, you do have other heroes appear with a kryptonite ring. And so with that ring, of course, being his weakness, you have the Eradicator be defeated very easily. But while all of that was going on, you didn't have Batwoman go out of her way to make sure that Ken was protected. And so with her doing that, it kind of showed like, hey, Batwoman is not a murderer at all, or not trying to be a killer. Like, she went out of her way to make sure that guy was safe. This same guy we saw in the video earlier that she tried to kill. Now, for Batwoman, this is a problem because for the question, Renee, she should have came to her with what she had found. Talk to her to kind of figure out what exactly is going on. And the thing is, it kind of showed that for Renee Montoya, she has no trust towards Batwoman at all. And so right now, these two characters are at even more odds with one another. But now we have to jump back over to Jaime Reyes. Now, when we do, it's really more of Jaime Reyes is trying his best to, look for the patterns when it comes to the glitches in the system. But when he walks away, we see that somebody had just turned off the Phantom Zone containment. And remember, they're currently sending prisoners over to the Phantom Zone, apparently. And somebody had just turned it off, it seems like. And so as we get into the third chapter, the first panel really more is giving us a glimpse of the Watchtower being wrecked. But then we have to jump back in time to kind of learn what led into that moment. So you do have Renee kind of look back at all the different clues that she had gathered over time. But the problem is that she realized the only person right now who can truly help her is, well, Batwoman. But the problem is right now for Batwoman, she does not trust Renee at all at the moment because Renee had just accused her for attempted murder. But for Renee, she now knows like, hey, the only person right now who can really help me is Batwoman. And so unfortunately, we have no choice here but to work together before the Watchtower gets completely wrecked. But now we have to jump over to Jaime Reyes. Now, when we do, it's really more Jaime just still trying his best to figure out what's going on with the actual system of the Watchtower. And he kind of realized that there's something going on in the Phantom Zone. But the problem is that while you have Jaime trying to figure out what's happening, he then gets attacked from behind by Nightshade. Now, for Nightshade, she's being controlled by somebody else. And so just like that, she takes out Blue Beetle, and now her goal is to help out whoever is controlling her at the moment. But getting back over to Renee and also Batwoman, they do head over to the cell that's currently being used right now to hold the Eradicator, to continue to interrogate him, to kind of figure out what in the world is going on here. Now, for the Eradicator, he's kind of like, listen, you can go ahead and try your best to interrogate me, beat me up, all those different types of things. But the thing is, I'm not going to be fazed at all by what you're trying to do to me. Now, for Renee, it's kind of like, okay, fine. You're not scared of me right now. But the thing is, I want to know who is truly behind the attack because you said earlier that you are working for somebody else. Now, for the Eradicator, he tells Renee like, hey, listen, the person I work for, I'm basically using him as a way to get a new Krypton. And that's really it. I don't have any big plans down the road with that man. Now, you do have Renee bring up the Phantom Zone. And for the Eradicator, he's kind of like, oh, the Phantom Zone. You know what's funny? As you say that, I think our plans are going to come together finally because the Phantom Zone is a key piece of our plan. And so now we have to jump over to Conduit. Now, when we do, it's Conduit right now trying to, well, not trying to, he does. He turns all systems online to basically open up a portal from the Phantom Zone over into the Watchtower. And we see somebody with the Superman symbol coming into the Watchtower. But then we have to jump over to Blue Beetle, Ted Core, because you have Ted right now just minding his business, but out of nowhere, you have Nightshade once again being able to take out another Blue Beetle. And so just like that, one by one, the different people who were kind of there to make sure the Watchtower is protected is being taken out left and right. And so while you have Renee and also Batwoman going out of their way to, interrogate the Eradicator, they're then confronted by Nightshade. But then out of nowhere, the walls of the Watchtower come to life, begin to grab our heroes left and right, and unable to do anything at all to break free. Now for the question, she realized, okay, the proof was all there. The evidence was right there. All the different clues only pointed to one person only who had tried this. And so at the very last page of this chapter, we pick up with the whole idea that the person trying to take over the Watchtower is no other than Cyborg Superman. And this is where we're going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.